Many people think space is full of fearful things, which is true. However, you don't need to hop on a space rocket to find something that will scare the living daylights out of you, because they're about here on Earth. And because they're here on this planet, many of these terrifying things can affect you. One huge example is the latest terrifying thing that scientists just uncovered at the Yellowstone National Park. What is it, and how does it affect you anywhere in the world that you might live? Join us as we dive into the scientists' terrifying new discovery at Yellowstone National Park. The US is a truly huge place, covering 3.8 million square miles. Within that large landmass are uncountable natural attractions that receive visits from millions of people worldwide. They include lakes, waterfalls, deserts, and so forth. However, among these attractions, the government has carved out some for special attention because of their importance. These are the national parks, really vast wonders of nature. The US Congress made Yellowstone the first national park in America in 1872. In the years that followed, environmentalists lobbied for wilderness preservation throughout the American West to create several more national parks and monuments. And in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson established the National Park Service to consolidate America's federal parklands management under one agency. Today, the National Park Service manages 84 million acres across all US states and territories, an area bigger than the whole territory of Germany. These parks, numbering 423, have served as a model for countries around the world. Out of all the parks designated as national in the US, the Yellowstone was the most visited in 2020, with almost 4 million visitors. There are enough attractions in the Yellowstone to keep people coming back. Sprawling across a basalt plateau in the northwest corner of the state of Wyoming, this magnificent wilderness area spills into neighboring Idaho and Montana. It forms the heart of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, one of the world's largest and best preserved temperate zone ecosystems. As one of Wyoming's top attractions, this park is famous for its spectacular scenery, diverse ecosystems, and fascinating geothermal wonders. Yellowstone is home to the world's largest number of active geysers and offers a window into the powerful forces deep beneath the Earth's crust, the same forces that shaped this park and its dazzling and dramatic landscapes. The scenery ranges from snaking rivers and sweeping green valleys to vast lakes, canyons, thundering waterfalls, and hissing lunar-like landscapes. Each season paints a dramatically different scene, from the lush greens and sparkling blues of spring and summer when you can spot herds of bison and elk grazing along the riverbanks, to fall's fiery reds, oranges, and golds when fearsome grizzlies and black bears gorge on berries, to the white wonderland of the freezing winter. A visit to Yellowstone is not complete without a stopover at the geyser known as Old Faithful. It is named for the regularity with which it erupted, shooting columns of water high up into the air from between 35 minutes to 120 minutes, with an average interval of about 92 minutes. Not far from the Old Faithful is the Black Sand Basin, one of the most colorful spots in the park. You can also hike on the Mount Washburn Trail or take in the sights of the awe-inspiring Grand Canyon and the Upper and Lower Falls. However, one of the biggest attractions in Yellowstone is the volcanic system, and this is where things get scary. Many visitors to Yellowstone might not know this, but the volcanic events in the park can affect everything in every part of the planet, as you shall soon see. We begin our story of the Yellowstone volcanic system about 66 million years ago, when the Cenozoic era started. The area now occupied by the park was sculpted by widespread mountain-forming volcanic events. However, rumblings have continued underneath our feet to this day. Magma, the molten rock that you find below the Earth's crust, is close to the surface in the Greater Yellowstone area. This shallow body of magma is caused by heat convection in the mantle. Consequently, plumes of magma rise through the mantle, melting rocks in the crust and creating magma reservoirs of partially molten, partially solid rock. Mantle plumes transport heat from deep in the mantle to the crust and create hot spot volcanism. These hotspots leave a trail of volcanic activity as tectonic plates drift over them. As the North American plate drifted westward over the last 16.5 million years, the hotspot that now resides under the Greater Yellowstone area left a swathe of volcanic deposits across Idaho's Snake River Plain. The heat rising from the mantle plume has melted rocks in the crust and created two magma chambers of partially molten, partially solid rock near Yellowstone's surface. The heat from the shallowest magma chamber caused an area of the crust above it to expand and rise. Stress on the overlying crust resulted in increased earthquake activity along newly formed faults. Eventually, these faults reached the magma chamber and magma oozed through the cracks. When the magma escaped, it released pressure within the chamber, allowing volcanic gases to escape and expand explosively in a massive volcanic eruption. The eruption spewed an enormous amount of volcanic ash and gas into the atmosphere and produced fast, superhot debris flows or pyroclastic flows over the landscape. With the underground magma chamber emptying, the ground above it collapsed and created the first of Yellowstone's 3 calderas. This eruption happened 2.1 million years ago and easily ranked among the largest volcanic eruptions known to man. It covered 5,790 square miles with ash, reaching as far away as Missouri. For context, the total volcanic material ejected is estimated to have been 6,000 times the volume of material ejected during the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington. A second significant volcanic eruption would occur about 800,000 years later. However, it was smaller and occurred within the western edge of the first caldera. A third and last massive volcanic eruption occurred 631,000 years ago and created the present 30 by 44 mile wide Yellowstone caldera. Since then, 80 minor eruptions have occurred, and the one that happened about 174,000 years ago created what is now the west thumb of Yellowstone Lake. During and after these explosive eruptions, massive lava flows of viscous rhyolitic lava and less voluminous basalt lava flows partially filled the caldera floor and surrounding terrain. The youngest of these lava flows is the 70,000-year-old pitchstone rhyolite flow in the southwest corner of Yellowstone National Park. Since the last of 3 caldera-forming eruptions, pressure from the shallow magma body has formed 2 resurgent domes inside the Yellowstone caldera. Magma may be as little as 3 to 8 miles beneath Sour Creek Dome and 8 to 12 miles beneath Mallard Lake Dome, and both domes inflate and subside as the volume of magma and hydrothermal fluids changes beneath them. The entire caldera floor lifts up or subsides too, but not as much as the 2 domes. In the past century, the net inflation has tilted the caldera floor toward the south. As a result, Yellowstone Lake's southern shores have subsided and trees now stand in water, and the north end of the lake has risen into a sandy beach at Fishing Bridge. Is the Yellowstone volcano active today? The answer is yes. Remarkable ground deformation has been documented along the central axis of the caldera between Old Faithful and White Lake in Pelican Valley in historic time. Surveys of suspected ground deformation began in 1975 using vertical motion surveys of benchmarks in the ground. By 1985, the surveys documented unprecedented uplift of the entire caldera above a meter. Later, GPS measurements revealed that the caldera went into an episode of subsidence or sinking until 2005, when the caldera returned to an episode of extreme uplift. The most significant vertical movement was recorded at the White Lake GPS station inside the caldera's eastern rim, where the total uplift from 2004 to 2010 was about 27 centimeters. However, what happens if Yellowstone's volcano erupts again? The picture isn't pretty. The effect will be felt worldwide, but of course, the closer you are to Yellowstone, the more you are affected. This event can be 1,000 times more powerful than a regular volcanic eruption, eject at least 240 cubic miles of material, and last weeks or months. The lava flows themselves will be contained within a relatively small radius within the park, say 40 miles or so. In fact, only about 1/3 of the material will end up in the atmosphere. However, the main damage will come from volcanic ash, a combination of splintered rock and glass. This will shoot miles into the air and scatter around the country. A super eruption can conceivably bury the northern Rockies in 3 feet of ash, basically devastating large swathes of Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Montana, and Utah. Meanwhile, the Midwest will get a few inches of ash, while both coasts will see even smaller amounts. This volcanic ash is toxic and can kill people, plants, and animals. It will even crush buildings. Even a few inches of ash can destroy farms, clog roadways, cause severe respiratory problems, block sewer lines, and even short out transformers. Air travel will stop in much of North America. What about globally? A big volcanic eruption in Yellowstone will significantly affect the global climate. Volcanoes can emit sulfur aerosols that reflect sunlight back into the atmosphere and cool the climate. These particles cannot survive for long in the atmosphere, so the effect is only temporary, but it can still be dramatic. For example, when Pinatubo erupted in 1991, it cooled the planet by 1 degree Celsius or 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit for a few years. The Tambora eruption in 1815 was worse because it cooled the Earth enough to damage crops around the world, likely causing famines in some areas. Bear in mind that those were relatively tiny eruptions compared to what a supervolcano in Yellowstone is capable of. Globally, the eruption will cause trillions of dollars worth of damage. However, you don't need to fear or fret because of a Yellowstone volcanic eruption. Right now, there's no sign of a pending eruption. Sure, Yellowstone Park continues to get earthquakes and the ground rises and falls, but that is nothing out of the ordinary. Yellowstone has been behaving like that for the past 140 years. The odds are very high that Yellowstone will be eruption-free for the coming centuries. Also, if you look at the past 3 eruptions, the odds of Yellowstone erupting in any given year are 0.00014%, lower than the odds of getting hit by an asteroid from space. But even that is not a good estimate because it's not certain that Yellowstone erupts on a regular cycle or that it's overdue for another eruption. In fact, there might never be a big eruption in Yellowstone again. Let's hear what you think of a potential Yellowstone supervolcanic eruption in the comment section.